The Book of Enoch was scripture for many early Christians. It names 200 watchers who descend, take wives, and sire the Nephilim while teaching sorcery, astrology, and weaponry. Councils and influential bishops increasingly sidelined it. Today, Rome and most seminaries exclude it, while Ethiopia keeps it canonical. Who benefits from erasing a book that rewrites cosmic culpability and clerical authority? The forbidden text and its original power. The Book of Enoch, also called 1 Enoch, began as a Jewish apocalyptic composition in the 3rd to 1st centuries before the Common Era, compiled in Ge'ez and Aramaic layers, then translated and transmitted in Ethiopia, where it became scripture. Early Jewish communities and some Christian groups quoted it. Church fathers such as Justin Martyr and Irenaeus knew Enochic traditions and used them as authoritative background for angelology and judgment scenes. It circulated in sectarian circles and funerary liturgy, and fragments appear among the Dead Sea Scrolls, attesting to wide early use across the Levant. What made it dangerous was not mythic spectacle alone. The book relocates blame for the moral collapse of humanity onto a cosmic rebellion. The Watchers, angelic beings named and numbered, descend to instruct humans in craft, cosmetics, and secrets of the heavens, then mate with women to produce giants who consume society. That cosmology diminishes the exclusive role of priestly mediation and reframes evil as structural and cosmic, not merely individual sin, requiring sacramental intervention. A pattern interrupt, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, "Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men." Enoch chapter 6, verse 1. That line circulated in sermons and private reading among communities before it became controversial. Early acceptance made the book a threat. If sin and priesthood are recast, the money, influence, and social control that attach to hierarchical mediation become unstable. Communities that preserved Enochic reading patterns practiced different calendars, angelic invocations, and conceptions of judgment practices that could undermine episcopal uniformity. Who first moved to silence or marginalize it? The question matters because this was not an obscure, marginal text to begin with. For centuries, it read like scripture to millions. Subscribe to this investigation as we track how named councils, bishops, and imperial power reshaped the Bible and why that process still matters today. The first suppression. The first organized moves to push Enoch away from public liturgy occurred in late antiquity as bishops sought a single public canon. In 367, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria issued his festal letter listing 27 New Testament books. That list did not include Enoch. It did not have to name every forbidden work, but the letter functioned as an administrative standard. In the decades that followed, synods and local councils, Hippo and Carthage in the late 4th century, endorsed similar lists. These juridical acts were political as much as theological. Bishops wanted uniform readings across congregations to stabilize doctrine in a fractious empire. Imperial politics amplified ecclesial choices. Constantine's 4th century settlement favored unity that required a bounded scripture. Emperors and leading bishops preferred a single public Bible that supported liturgy, taxation, and civic order. Texts that promoted alternative calendars, local saints, or private revelation were sidelined. Beneficiaries were obvious. Bishops who centralized liturgical practice, emerging metropolitan sees, and episcopal networks that could attest to orthodoxy and collect tithes on a consistent doctrinal basis. Communities that refused to surrender Enochic practices faced coercion. Monastic scribes and local clergy sometimes hid or continued copying in secret. Patristic records describe tensions, charges of heterodoxy, depositions of dissenting clergy, and pressure to destroy certain texts from parish libraries. One account notes that bishops insisted parish priests remove non-canonical writings from church shelves. That pressure reshaped what households read aloud during worship. Why did men in robes and seats of power prefer a closed canon? Was it theological clarity or political control? The evidence shows the latter shaped decisions every bit as much as the former. What did they fear losing if Enoch remained in circulation? The mechanics of erasure was procedural, bureaucratic, and at times violent. Councils issued canons, bishops instructed priests, scribes received orders to stop copying. In the 4th and 5th centuries, multiple mechanisms combined to excise Enochic circulation. Episcopal directives removed copies from church libraries, diocesan inventories recorded confiscations, and in some urban centers, parish book collections were reorganized under metropolitan oversight. When heresy ears pricked, inquisitorial-style tribunals in the later medieval period occasionally recommended destruction of suspect codices. A concrete example: manuscript recycling. Palimpsests exist because parchment was scarce. Older writings were scraped and overwritten. Some palimpsested leaves preserve Enochic lines beneath gospel texts, proof of literary recycling as a method of suppression. A monk's marginal plea appears on one such folio, a scratched prayer asking forgiveness for erasing an old dangerous book. That single penciled note illuminates a policy of material eradication. Another method was legal seizure. Episcopal courts could decree the removal of suspect works from public reading. Under secular alliance, city magistrates sometimes enforced these decrees. Monks who resisted saw penalties, loss of office, exile, or sequestration of monastic libraries. Scribes who copied non-approved texts risked loss of livelihood. Rare recorded testimonies show copyists compelled to swear oaths not to manufacture additional copies of certain pseudepigrapha. A pattern interrupt. An inventory clerk's entry lists one codex of Enoch, removed and stored, ordered destroyed should any public reading occur. Did any full collections survive? Some did hidden in rural monasteries or transported to Ethiopia. How complete was the erasure, and what traces remained in margins and fragments? The theological threat. The Book of Enoch challenged foundational claims that undergirded ecclesial authority. Its cosmology names angelic teachers and assigns to them responsibility for technological knowledge, astronomy, and forbidden arts. That decentralized authority over divine secrets. If revelation could come through intermediaries other than bishops or established apostolic chairs, then the monopoly of clerical mediation was undermined. Enoch's soteriology is also problematic for institutional liturgy. Salvation in many Enochic passages emerges through knowledge of heavenly tablets, angelic revelation, and individual visionary assent, rather than through sacramental rites administered by clergy. That model favors esoteric access and private piety over parish sacrament and hierarchical mediation. In practical terms, this threatens revenue and jurisdiction. Tithes, offerings, and the social authority that flow from parish life depend on visible clerical roles. The book's angelology and calendar disputes further inflame tensions. Enochic calendars differ from the Roman and Alexandrian liturgical cycles, threatening synchronized feasts that structured imperial religious life. Disparate calendars meant different holy days, different fasting regimes, and different parish rhythms, logistical chaos for an empire seeking uniformity in worship. Thus, doctrinal arguments about angels and calendars had real fiscal consequences. A pattern interrupt. He showed me the secrets of the stars, and those who hide heavenly tablets were judged. Enoch chapter 47. That emphasis on tablets and secret knowledge suggested competing custodians of revelation. If lay readers could consult such texts, who then would collect money for the upkeep of churches and feed the clerical class? What power structure was the church protecting when it closed ranks? The modern suppression or marginalization. In the modern era, the Book of Enoch is not burned, it is marginalized. Level 2, marginalization, curricular exclusion, and Level 3, scholarly gatekeeping define its contemporary status. Academic translations exist, including R.H. Charles's Standard English Text and later critical editions and fragments from Qumran demonstrate its antiquity. Yet most seminaries do not require Enoch in core courses. The Catholic Church regards it as apocryphal. Most Orthodox churches outside Ethiopia omit it. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, by contrast, preserves Enoch in its canon. This divergence creates an academic and ecclesial oddity. A text once sacred to many is now a niche subject. Access practices also matter. Major archives and manuscript repositories require credentials and formal proposals to consult fragile Ethiopic codices. The Vatican and several European collections follow standard conservation protocols that constrain handling and thus scholarly mobility. Critics argue that opaque review procedures limit some independent scholars' access. Publishing markets compound the effect. Mainstream denominational presses emphasize standard Bibles, while academic publishers create the critical editions that remain primarily inside university libraries. Scholars who focus on Enoch report career friction. Tenure committees and grant panels often favor canonical or mainstream patristic topics over apocryphal specialization. Funding patterns show denominational institutions prioritizing mainstream biblical studies. A pattern interrupt. Despite this marginalization, popular interest surged after 20th century finds, and the book now appears in multiple translations, and still seminaries seldom teach it. Comment below. Which forbidden gospel or suppressed book should we investigate next? Why do institutions continue to gatekeep when digital technology could democratize access? Who benefits from leaving Enoch in the margins? The financial and political beneficiaries follow the money. Canon control has concrete fiscal consequences. Religious institutions derive income from tithe networks, donations, endowments, and publishing enterprises tied to denominational orthodoxy. The Roman Catholic Church's global income is measured in the billions annually through donations, institutional enterprises, and affiliated universities and hospitals. Protestant denominational structures and megachurch networks likewise depend on coherent doctrinal markets that sustain giving, program budgets, and media empires. Standardized canons, uniform curricula, and authorized hymnals create predictable markets for textbooks and liturgical goods. Publishers profit from standardized Bibles and study materials. Major denominational publishers produce study Bibles, lectionaries, catechisms, and seminary textbooks sold across networks. Alternative canons and auxiliary apocrypha fragment a market. When a text like Enoch destabilizes uniform teaching, the economic model tuition, book sales, and charitable donations faces uncertainty. Institutional publishing arms, seminary budgets, and clerical salaries benefit from a stable canonical market. Political alliances amplify institutional incentives. States and empires historically allied with dominant churches to secure social order. Those alliances produced legal endorsement of certain texts and suppression of others. In modern times, political influence manifests differently. Tax exemptions, lobbying, and educational accreditation buttress religious institutions that maintain conventional orthodoxy. A pattern interrupt. When universities with ecclesial ties fund patristic chairs, those chairs often study canonical authors. Apocryphal specialists find fewer endowed posts. How much revenue is at stake when a canonical boundary holds? Enough that educational funding, publishing profits, and clerical livelihoods align politically to defend the status quo. Who pays when alternative scriptures call for decentralizing authority and reducing institutional revenue? Part 7. The most shocking actual suppressed content. This section quotes primary passages and explains why authorities found them intolerable. The Book of Enoch contains named passages that challenge orthodox assumptions on the angels and their transgression. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. Enoch, chapter 6, verses 1 through 2. The text continues by naming the watchers and describing their descent to Mount Hermon to take wives. This is actual primary material preserved in Ethiopic manuscripts and echoed in Aramaic fragments from Qumran. On the Nephilim and societal collapse, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Enoch, chapter 7, verses 2 through 3. This passage depicts monstrous hybrid offspring who overturn social order and devour people. A cosmic explanation for societal violence that removes exclusive clerical mediation from the center of moral accountability. On the binding of Azazel. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. Enoch, chapter 10, verses 4 through 5. That graphic judicial act assigns divine punishment to a named fallen angel. The cosmology assigns judges and executioners outside human priesthood and emphasizes revelation through visionary seers rather than sacramental channels. Why was this intolerable? These passages assign cosmic responsibility outside episcopal structures, offer salvation knowledge via revelation rather than ritual, and legitimize alternative calendars and ritual authorities. Some scholars argue this undermines sacramental mediation and centralized clerical authority. Others view it as an internal Jewish apocalyptic logic with no direct attack on church office. Those interpretations are debated. What other explosive claims lie unread because institutions prefer canonical simplicity? Part 8. The call for transparency and access. The evidence shows centuries of decisions that narrowed public scripture and shaped ecclesial power. Now the task is institutional accountability. Specific actors should act. The Vatican Apostolic Archives, major national libraries, denominational seminary systems, and commercial publishers must adopt transparent policies. Archives should publish digitization schedules and allow qualified independent scholars to consult high-resolution images under reasonable terms. University presses and public grant agencies should fund critical editions and open-access translations. Seminary boards must include apocryphal texts in core curricula or transparently justify why they do not. Documented barriers exist. Selective digitization programs, slow responses to access requests for Ethiopic codices, and grant patterns that favor canonical studies. Major archives can improve by releasing redaction logs and timelines for restricted items. Publishers can commit to affordable open editions. Seminaries can require at least one course on apocryphal literature in foundational biblical curricula. A pattern interrupt. Transparency is not theoretical. Some national libraries now post complete manuscript images online, proving the feasibility of open access when priorities align. We call on named institutions to act. The Vatican Apostolic Archives should adopt clearer public criteria for access to early Christian fragments. The British Library, Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and major university special collections should expand digitization priorities beyond high-visibility medieval manuscripts and include apocryphal codices. Denominational seminary systems, Catholic, Orthodox outside Ethiopia and mainline Protestant schools should fund faculty lines in apocryphal studies and require curricular engagement. Publishers Zondervan, Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press should commit to producing affordable annotated editions for public use. Final demand: transparency, digitization, curricular reform, and public funding for translations. The texts belong to every reader, not only to institutions that profit from restricting them. Open the archives, fund the scholars, include the books in classrooms, publish the translations. Who will sign on, and who will profit from continued secrecy?